vivid versions.
The binder was eggshell white, bound in a textured vegan leather that felt intentionally synthetic, a material designed to mimic life without the messy reality of it. It was embossed with a minimalist logo, a stylized C entwined with a D, looking more like a corporate merger than a romantic union. Delilah placed it on my glass-topped dining table with the practiced reverence of a priestess delivering a scroll of prophecy. Outside, the Seattle skyline was a jagged graph of neon and rain. The Space Needle a lonely needle in a haystack of gray fog, but inside my penthouse, the air was climate-controlled to a perfect, silent 68 degrees. "This is the protocol, Carter," she said. Her voice had that specific, breathy quality she used when she was pitching an evolution of our relationship. It was a voice that didn't allow for interruptions, a tone refined through years of curated social media presence and high-stakes networking. For the merger, we can't just wing it, not if we want the brand to scale. Moving in isn't just about sharing a zip code. It's about aligning our narrative architectures. I looked at the binder, then at Delilah. She was polished chrome and cashmere. Her hair was a curated wave of honey blonde that cost more per month than most people's car payments. And her skin had the translucent glow of someone who slept 8 hours a night on silk and ate nothing that wasn't organic or vibrantly green. I had always admired her surface, the way she managed the optics of her life with the precision of a Swiss watchmaker. I was a man of systems, a venture capitalist who lived by the spreadsheet and the quarterly report, and for 18 months, Delilah had been the most beautiful asset in my portfolio. But looking at the binder, I felt the first cold prickle of a hostile takeover. The merger, I repeated, the word tasting of iron. You mean moving in? You mean sharing the closet and deciding who buys the milk? I mean becoming one, she corrected, her eyes not on mine, but on the reflection of the city lights in the polished surface of the table. She reached out and adjusted the binder by a fraction of a millimeter, ensuring it was perfectly parallel to the edge of the glass. "I've drafted the standing orders for the transition. Since you're the principal, financially speaking, your role is to provide the infrastructure, the foundation. But for the optics of the high-stakes event next week, the at-home launch for my followers, I need you to follow the script. This isn't just our life anymore, Carter. It's a case study in aspiration." I opened the binder. It wasn't a list if it would buy the groceries or how we'd split the utilities. It was a 50-page document titled Operational Integration and Aesthetic Guardrails. It was a manifesto of erasure. "The rules," I whispered, flipping through pages of color-coded tabs. "The protocol," she insisted, her finger tracing the first tab. "Rule 1, the narrator shift. During the housewarming and the move-in vlogs, you are the silent partner. You provide the backdrop of stability. You don't talk about the logistics or the due diligence. You talk about support. If someone asks about the cost of the renovation, the custom cabinetry, or the vintage rugs, you defer to me. You are the wind beneath the wings, Carter, not the pilot. In this story, I am the visionary, and you are the strength that allows the vision to breathe." I felt a coldness in my chest that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. I had spent 15 years building a firm that managed $3 billion in assets. I was a lead investor. I was the person who sat at the head of the table and decided which companies lived and which were dismantled for parts. In this binder, however, I was being demoted to background scenery, a human-shaped piece of furniture designed to imply wealth without ever speaking of its source. "Rule 2, the spatial boundary," she continued, her finger moving to a floor plan she'd had a professional designer draft without my input. "The master suite and the living area are content zones. They must remain pristine. No stray chargers, no tech magazines, no financial journals. Your office, your current office, is being converted into the wardrobe extension. My collection requires climate-controlled verticality. Your new workspace will be the secondary den in the back, near the service entrance. It's quieter, better for someone who just needs to look at numbers all day. She was moving me, not just my things, but my presence. I was being shifted from the center of my own home, a space I had designed for efficiency and clarity, to the periphery. I was being moved toward the exit, one aesthetic choice at a time. Rule 3. The financial shield, she said, her voice dropping an octave into a register of faux vulnerability. This was the core of the protocol, the hidden clause in the contract. From a moment the first box crosses the threshold, our public-facing image is one of total abundance. No talk of budgets. No talk of limits. If I need to upgrade a fixture or order a piece of art to complete the vibe, you authorize it. It's an investment in us. A man of your stature shouldn't be seen counting pennies when his partner is trying to build a legacy. She finally looked at me, but she wasn't seeing Carter. She was looking at the objective, the vision of a life curated for a million strangers on a screen. She saw a partner who was an ATM with a pulse, a supporting character whose only job was to maintain the silence that allowed her monologue to flourish. I looked at my porcelain cup. The tea was stone cold, a dark, still pool. "You're asking me to be a guest in my own life," I said. "I'm asking you to be a partner," she countered, her eyes welling up with a practiced, shimmering moisture that never quite ruined her mascara. A generous man wouldn't make me feel like a tenant. A man who loved me would want me to shine. "You have so much, Carter. Why are you hoarding the spotlight? Why are you being so transactional?" "I see," I said, my voice as flat as a digital interface. "The protocol is noted." The high-stakes event arrived 7 days later. It was the big reveal, the day the moving trucks arrived and the C&D lifestyle became a public reality. My penthouse, once a sanctuary of minimalist wood and glass, was now a war zone of bubble wrap, ring lights, and content managers. Delilah had hired a team of 3 freelancers to document the unboxing. I wasn't allowed to touch the boxes. I wasn't even allowed to help carry the heavy stuff. Carter moved to the left. A young man with a gimbal-mounted camera and a headset barked at me. He didn't know my name was on the deed, or that I'd paid for the camera he was holding through the marketing stipend Delilah had requested. To him, I was just the boyfriend, a prop to be positioned for maximum depth of field. "You're blocking the light on the Hermes blankets. We need that orange to pop against the gray." I stepped back. I kept stepping back until I was in the hallway, standing in the shadows of the foyer. I watched as Delilah directed the movers with the intensity of a field general. She wasn't placing furniture for comfort or utility. She was placing it for frames. The sofa, a piece of Italian leather I actually enjoyed, was angled away from the fireplace and toward the window, not because the view was better, but because the natural light hit the fabric better for the 4 p.m. golden hour posts. Then I saw her, the successor. Her name was Chloe. She was 22, a junior creative associate Delilah had hired 3 weeks ago. Chloe was a mirror image of what Delilah used to be with me. Attentive, laughing at every observation, anticipating every need. But Chloe wasn't anticipating my needs. She was anticipating Delilah's. I stood by the kitchen island, a cold, white slab of Carrara marble that felt like a tombstone, and watched them. Delilah and Chloe were huddled over a tablet, their heads touching. They shared a secret code of shorthand, high key, desaturated, engagement optimized, soft launching the master suite. When Delilah wanted a drink, she didn't look at me. She didn't even speak. She made a small, circular motion with her index finger. Chloe immediately produced a chilled bottle of electrolyte water with a straw already inserted, holding it at the perfect height so Delilah didn't have to look down. It was a level of intimacy that Delilah and I hadn't shared in months. Chloe was now the one who held this subject's attention. She was the one who understood the nuances of the brand. I was merely the infrastructure, the silent, invisible power grid that kept the lights on so the show could continue. "Carter," Delilah called out, her eyes fixed on the tablet Chloe was holding. "The movers are taking your mahogany desk down to the basement storage. It didn't fit the coastal zen aesthetic of the new den. We've replaced it with a glass writing table. It's more transparent. It disappears into the room." "The mahogany desk was my father's," I said, my voice sounding distant even to me. "It was the only thing he left me that didn't have a lien on it." "It's a legacy piece, I get it," she said, finally looking at me, but her eyes were scanning my face for a reaction she could use, perhaps a relatable moment of emotional vulnerability she could vlog later, rather than for my feelings. "But it's heavy, Carter. It anchors the room in the past. It's heavy energy. We're about the future now. Right, Chloe?" "Totally," Chloe chirped, flashing a smile that was all teeth and no soul. "The glass table makes the room feel like it's floating. It's there now." I walked toward the master bedroom, wanting to find a moment of quiet, but a velvet rope, literally a braided silk cord, had been draped across the doorway. "Sorry, sir," one of the production assistants said, stopping me with a hand on my chest. "Delilah's doing the first look reveal in there. No one allowed on the carpet until the vacuum lines are filmed. We need the pile to look untouched." I was a ghost in my own hallways. I walked to the secondary den, the room formerly known as the guest suite. It was at the very end of the long corridor, past the laundry room and the HVAC closet. My things had been piled there in haphazard stacks, stripped of their organization. My books on venture cycles, my award from the board, my history, all shoved into a room that lacked a view of the city. The only window looked out onto the brick wall of the neighboring building. I sat on a packing crate and looked at the transparent glass table. It was fragile. It was held together by tiny chrome bolts. It couldn't hold the weight of a single heavy book, let alone a life. From the other end of the penthouse, I heard a burst of synchronized laughter. Delilah and Chloe. The inner circle had moved. The power had shifted. I was no longer the lead. I was the craft services provider, the man who paid for the stage but wasn't allowed to stand on it. The realization hit me with the quiet, devastating click of a key turning in a lock. I wasn't being integrated in her life. I was being edited out of it. I was the beta version that was being phased out for a more streamlined, profitable model. The discovery of the truth happened at 11:42 p.m., 3 days after the move-in. The production team had finally left, taking their ring lights and their ambition with them. Delilah was asleep, or at least she was recharging behind a weighted silk mask infused with lavender. I was in my new, cramped office, trying to reconcile the moving invoices. The numbers weren't adding up. The marketing stipend I had given her had been exhausted in 48 hours, yet more invoices were pouring in. I found a thick envelope tucked into the back of a folder labeled Aesthetic Expenses. It was hidden behind a series of fabric swatches for curtains we didn't need. It wasn't a furniture invoice. It was a stack of credit card statements from 3 different banks, all in Delilah's name, all maxed out. The balances were a rhythmic staccato of financial disaster. $12,400, $15,100, $13,500. Total, $41,000. I spread the statements out on the glass table. The glass groaned under the weight of the paper. I began to read the line items. They weren't for the merger. They weren't for our shared life. They were for the surface. High-end skin treatments, designer shoes for unboxing videos, engagement pods for her social media to artificially inflate her numbers, and a series of cash advances that had clearly been used to keep her lifestyle afloat while she searched for a generous man to provide a permanent safety net. I didn't storm into the bedroom. I didn't wake her. That would have been unstable. I would have been playing the role of the angry man, a narrative she could easily flip to her advantage. Instead, I did what I do best. I audited. I sat there for 4 hours, my eyes burning in the dim light of the desk lamp, cross-referencing her manifesto of love with the cold, hard data of her deception. She hadn't been looking for a partner. She had been looking for a debt restructuring plan. I was the bridge loan she never intended to pay back. The next morning, I didn't speak to her. I didn't even look at her. I left the penthouse at 6 a.m., before she or Chloe had even begun their morning manifestation rituals. I went to my real office, the one downtown with the heavy oak doors, the silent secretaries, and the floor-to-ceiling windows that looked down on the world from a height she would never reach. I sat at my desk, the real desk, and waited. Then, the communications began. It started with an annoyance, a minor glitch in her system. 10:15 a.m. Delilah. Babe, where are you? The organizers are here to color coordinate your socks and categorize your ties by mood. I need you to authorize the $2,000 efficiency fee on the app. They won't start until the payment clears. I watched the text bubble pop up on my desktop monitor. I didn't click it. I went back to reviewing a Series B term sheet for a biotech firm. 10:45 a.m. Delilah. Carter? Hello. Optics are everything. We have the home office shoot at noon. I need you to sign off on the new lighting for the foyer. It's a strategic necessity. Chloe says the current shadows are hostile to the lens. Text me back. I felt a strange sense of clarity. The more she typed, the more she revealed the mechanics of her affection. It was all optics and strategic necessity. There was no "how are you?" or "did you sleep okay?" There was only the maintenance of the machine. 12:30 p.m. Delilah. I found the envelope on your desk. I assume you're processing it. Don't be cold, Carter. It's just numbers. We're supposed to be a team now. What's mine is yours, remember? That's what moving in means. It's about trust. The word trust coming from her felt like a dividend payment from a bankrupt company. Worthless and insulting. 2:15 p.m. Delilah. Your silence is actually really triggering. It's a form of emotional withholding, Carter. It's very old world. I thought you were a generous man. If you loved me, you'd fix this. $41,000 is nothing to you. It's a rounding error on one of your trades. Why are you making me feel small over a rounding error? Are you really going to let $40,000 come between us? This was the emotional blackmail, the weaponized love she used to bypass personal accountability. She was trying to frame my fiscal sanity as a character flaw. 4 p.m. Delilah. Chloe says you're probably just stressed about the market. I'm going to go ahead and use the household emergency card you gave me for the lighting and the organizers. We can't have the launch in the dark. Silence is consent, right? See you tonight for the celebration dinner. I watched the text scroll by. I didn't reply. Instead, I watched a different screen, the one that showed the real-time activity on my secondary accounts. I saw the household emergency card attempt a transaction at a high-end lighting boutique. Transaction declined. I saw it attempt a transaction at an executive organization firm. Transaction declined. I had frozen the accounts an hour ago. I had also revoked her access to the digital locks on the wine cellar and the primary suite safe. 4:30 p.m. Delilah. The card declined. In front of the contractors. Do you have any idea how that looks? I am mortified. You're humiliating me in my own home. Is this a power play? If you try to discipline me like an employee, it won't work. I deserve to be supported, not managed. 5:45 p.m. Delilah, fine. If you're going to be like this, I'm taking some space. I'm going to dinner with Chloe to decompress. We're going to discuss the brand pivot. If you want to talk like adults without the math and the audits, call me. Otherwise, Don't expect me to be there when you get home. I didn't call. I spent the evening drafting a very different kind of protocol. I sat in my office until the sun dipped below the horizon, watching the city lights flicker on like a billion tiny data points. I felt a profound sense of catharsis, a shedding of weight. I wasn't losing a partner. I was terminating a predatory contract. I was waiting for her when she returned at midnight. I wasn't in the bedroom, and I wasn't in the basement den. I was sitting at the kitchen island, the content zone she had so carefully curated. The lights were off, save for a single pendant lamp that cast a clinical, white glow over the marble surface. The vibe was gone. The penthouse felt like what it was, a high-priced box of glass and steel, stripped of its marketing. Delilah walked in, her heels clicking aggressively on the hardwood. Chloe was behind her, clutching her tablet like a shield, her eyes darting around the darkened room. "The lights are off," Delilah said, her voice sharp and brittle. "It looks like a morgue in here. What is wrong with you?" "A morgue is a place where you keep things that have already died," I said quietly. It seemed appropriate. The relationship died somewhere between Rule 1 and the $40,000 debt. Chloe made a move toward the hallway, sensing the atmospheric pressure, but I held up a hand. "Stay, Chloe. You're the junior creative associate. You've been an integral part of the C&D brand. You should see how the principal handles a closing." Delilah dropped her $5,000 handbag on the counter. It made a heavy, dull thud. "I'm tired of the drama, Carter. If this is about the debt, I already told you. It was an investment in the US brand. I had to look the part to get you to notice me, didn't I? It's a cost of acquisition. It's how the world works. Pay it, and we could go back to being happy. Stop being so small." "I don't love your financial habits, Delilah," I said, my voice as steady as a heartbeat. "And I don't love being a supporting character in a script I didn't write. I'm not small. I'm just finished being your liquid asset." I pushed a single sheet of paper across the marble. It wasn't a check. It wasn't even a legal notice. It was a spreadsheet. "What is this?" she hissed, refusing to touch the paper. "The audit," I said. "You talk about love and generosity as if they are abstract, magical concepts that exempt you from the laws of physics and finance. But I'm a man of data. So let's look at the math of our merger over the last 6 months. Let's look at the objective moments that prove my worth has been depleted in your eyes." I pointed to the first line, the ink black and undeniable. Point 1, the narrative erasure. In 180 days, you have asked about my work exactly 4 times. Each of those times was followed, within 6 minutes, by a request for a tactical loan. You didn't want to know about my day. You were checking the status of the vault. Total interest in my actual life, 2.2%. That's unfair. Point 2. I continued, my voice cutting through her interruption. Spatial displacement. Since we started Project Cohabitation, you have displaced 85% of my physical presence in this home. You moved my father's desk to a basement to make room for a wardrobe extension. You relegated my career to a windowless closet next to the furnace. You treated my history as heavy energy that needed to be purged. My spatial value in this relationship, 15%. I was trying to create a cohesive aesthetic for our future, she cried, her voice rising. Point 3, I said, my finger moving to the final line. The bad faith disclosure. The $41,000 debt. You hid it until the move-in was locked. You waited until my things were in boxes and my life was disrupted before you revealed the liability. In the world of M&A, Delilah, that's called fraudulent inducement. You didn't want a partner. You wanted a bailout. You used the word love as a weapon to bypass accountability. You gambled that my generosity would outweigh my logic. You calculated wrong. My ROI on this merger, negative 100%. Delilah's face shifted. The polished chrome cracked. The breathy, evolving voice was replaced by something jagged, old, and ugly. The surface finally fell away, revealing the desperate, grasping thing beneath. "You're a cold, robotic prick," she spat, her face contorting. "You have millions, millions, and you're sitting here counting pennies while I'm trying to build something beautiful. A generous man would have paid the debt before I even had to ask. A generous man would be happy to see his woman shine. You're just a bean counter with a nice view. You don't know the first thing about love." "A generous man is not a foolish man," I replied. "I offered you a way out. I offered to help you create a budget. I offered to help you pay it off over 3 years through discipline, work, and shared sacrifice. I offered you a path to actual growth. You called that abusive. You called it withholding. Because you don't want to grow, Delilah. You want to be subsidized. Because I'm worth it," she screamed, slapping the marble counter. "I'm not a clerk, Carter. I'm a creator. I don't do budgets. I don't do 3-year plans. I am the brand." She looked at Chloe, seeking validation, seeking the echo she had paid for. Chloe was tapping furiously on her tablet, her face illuminated by the pale blue light of the screen. She wasn't looking at Delilah with sympathy. She was looking at her with a strange, clinical detachment, the same way Delilah had looked at me. "I'm leaving," Delilah said, her eyes flashing with a mix of fury and terror. "I'm going to stay with Chloe. And when I find a man who actually understands the value of a woman like me, a man who isn't a slave to a spreadsheet, a man who knows how to be truly generous, you'll be begging me to come back. You'll be sitting in this cold, empty museum all by yourself, wondering where the light went." She waited. This was the moment in her script where the hero realizes that love is worth more than money. She waited for me to stand up, to grab her arm, to tear up the spreadsheet and offer the $41,000 as a bribe to keep the light in the room. She wanted the climax of a movie that hadn't been filmed. I stood up. I walked past her, my footsteps echoing on the wood. I walked toward the front door. I reached out and opened it, the heavy steel swinging wide to reveal the silent, carpeted hallway of the penthouse floor. "That is your prerogative," I said. Delilah froze. The script had gone off the rails. The silent partner had spoken, and he wasn't following the cues. He was ending the scene. You're just letting me go?" she whispered, the bravado slipping for a second. "I'm not letting you go," I corrected. "I'm releasing a liability. There's a difference. You can take your protocol with you. I've already deleted the digital copy." She stared at me for a long, agonizing beat, her face a mask of shock and burgeoning rage. She realized then that she had no leverage. Her weapon had hit a wall of objective reality and shattered. She snatched her handbag from the counter, signaled to Chloe with a sharp, bird-like jerk of her head, and marched toward the door. "You'll be alone. Carter!" she shouted over her shoulder as she stepped into the hall, her voice echoing in the corridor. "No one is going to love a man who treats a relationship like a tax audit. You're going to die with your numbers." "Perhaps," I said, my voice calm and final. "But at least the books will be balanced." I closed the door. The click of the lock was a symphony of finality. It was the most satisfying sound I had heard in 18 months. I walked back into the kitchen. I looked at the marble island, the designer lighting, the coastal zen furniture that had been arranged to please a lens rather than a human being. It all felt like stage props now, light, flimsy, and temporary. I felt a lightness in my own limbs, a sense of catharsis that was almost physical. I was no longer an anchor for someone else's storm. I went to the basement. It took me 2 hours, moving slowly and deliberately, but I moved the mahogany desk back up. I didn't care about the vacuum lines. I didn't care about the golden hour. I pushed the desk right into the center of the living room, displacing a curated side table that cost more than my first car. I positioned it facing the floor-to-ceiling window. The rain had stopped. The Seattle skyline was sharp and clear, a grid of light and shadow that made perfect sense. The fog had lifted, revealing the structure of the city. I sat at the desk, the heavy, solid wood feeling like an extension of my own bones. I opened my laptop and created a new file. I didn't title it with initials or logos. I titled it Carter, Year Zero. The first entry was a credit, $41,000, the cost of a lesson well learned. The second entry was a realization. Peace is an asset that doesn't require a surface. The third entry was a commitment. Never again provide the infrastructure for someone else's erasure of you. I brewed a fresh pot of tea. It wasn't content. It wasn't aesthetic. It was just tea. I sat in the dark, watching the city breathe, and for the first time in a very long time, I wasn't a supporting character. I was the lead. The room was quiet, the air was still, and the temperature was exactly where I wanted it to be. I was alone, but for the first time in years, I wasn't lonely. I was solvent.
Thanks for listening.